Junaid, are we live now? Junaid, I cannot hear you. I saw you unmute, but I cannot hear you. Right, gentlemen. So we are live now. So I'll start with the opening. Good afternoon, everyone, in ASEAN, Southeast Asia region, and in Pakistan. Um, I want to welcome everybody to today's webinar, and thank you very much, everybody, for joining in on Zoom and social media, ICAP's Facebook page, ICAP's YouTube channel, so wherever you're joining from. Um, I want to start with thank you to ICAP for their continued support for supporting us to organize this webinar. And today's webinar is titled The Human Side of Transformation, Culture, Change Management, and Leadership. It's a topic that speaks to the heart of the organization, how the organizations evolve. And it's not just through the system and the strategies, but it's through the people, the mindset, and the leadership that really drives the core of the organization and the business. So I have had the privilege of being part of some of the transformations, be part of the core team, leading some of the initiatives. So this subject, this topic is very close to my heart, some of my experiences that I've had. Um, in my experiences, what stands out is that successful transformation is built on engaging with the teams respectfully, nurturing the talent, creating some sustainable ecosystems so that it's not just a 6 month or 1 year or 2 years exercise, but it is sustainable. And those ecosystem, those work is like backed by, data backed decision making, supported with that kind of ecosystem setting in place. So, I had some of the experiences, some of the opportunities to be part of the transformations. Not all of them were successful, but I'm happy to say that at least two of them were very, very successful, and I feel very proud of that. These efforts, in my experience, help to turn around the business performance, build the lasting impact. And if I were to distill my experience of this transformation into maybe some of the key phrases or key words, that would be, how do you structure it? What's the discipline that you drive, and then what's the accountability that you drive. So it's essentially structure, discipline, and accountability. Um, Transformation becomes more relevant for us in the current context. If you think about last 12 months, there have been thousands of people who have been laid off by many international organizations globally. And if you look closely, so those are indications of not just the change in strategies, but those are the reflection of changes coming through transformation, cultural shifts, change management. And as we navigate this era of accelerated change, right, accelerated by enabled by technology tools, be it AI or be it any other tools that are in place today. The pace has for sure accelerated. And I think what is very, very important is to keep an open mindset and lead with authenticity as we go along in this journey, right? So today's session, the human side of transformation, culture, change management, and leadership. It highlights the critical role of people, mindset, and the leadership in shaping the future of organizations. So I want to welcome two of our panelists, good friends, Dennis and Adil. Dennis is based in Kuala Lumpur. Adil is based in Singapore. I'll just quickly go through their introduction, and then I'll pass on the floor to Adil to moderate the session. He has prepared some very good, very insightful questions. I'm looking forward to learn a lot from that. So Dennis Eckerman, he's a founder of Orbis Business School in Kuala Lumpur. He's a transformational coach, consultant, and global speaker who has worked across more than 30 countries. He's based in Malaysia for over a decade. Dennis brings deep insight and personal experiences. He's author of the book, The Naked Leader, a book inspired by his own journey of transformation. Today, Dennis will share powerful lessons from his book and life, including 7 steps of becoming your best self, your naked, your naked self. So I'm really curious to understand about the title. So what was the thought process? The naked leaders, very striking and evocative. So I'm looking forward to understand more what inspired Dennis you to choose such a bold metaphor, and how does the naked reflect, being naked reflects the essence of leadership in your transformation philosophy. Then our dear friend Adil, he is based out of Singapore. He's audit director at Tetra Level. He's a seasoned audit and risk professional with over 20 years of international experience across Asia, Europe, Middle East. He brings a strong expertise in data analytics, digital transformation, and governance, and is known for his pragmatic leadership and strategic thinking. So, with that, I'll pass the floor to Adil to moderate the insightful conversation with Dennis, and looking forward to learn more about it. So, in the meantime, as I pass the floor, I just want to make a quick comment to our audience who has joined us from Zoom link or from the social media, ICAP social media. Please feel free to post your questions or comments, and we'll try to capture those. We'll try to get those addressed as the conversation, warms up. So, Adil, I'll pass the floor to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Humayun. Thanks a lot, ICAP, and thanks a lot, Dennis, for your time in advance. I'm based out of Singapore, and today is the National Day, so it's going to be quite a busy, cloudy, probably eventful evening for us here, but very excited for this session. One thing that came out from your opening remarks, Humayun, is indeed one thing that is constant is change. So I think so the change, the transformation, something that is happening and will be happening, and that's going to keep on reshaping our lives as we go along. Coming to the topic of today, so Dennis, if I may ask, actually, I was very intrigued by your book as well. In your book, you talk about hitting the rock bottom as a turning point. So I was wondering that why do you believe that the personal transformation is often the catalyst for professional leadership growth? So what's your views on that?
Yes, first of all, thank you for your time and kind introduction, and great to be here in today's session to talk about this topic also close to my heart, based on my personal experiences as well as my professional experience, because I think that transformation is the one key trait that we need, not only to survive, but I think to thrive in the current situation, like Humayun also mentioned. The pace of change is accelerating. And rather than resisting it or ignoring it, I think we better find ways how to embrace it. Now, why is that personal side so important for professional leadership side? To answer that question is, I think that if you look at a lot of training and books about leadership, it's mostly how you get from zero to hero, how to build your career. You learn how to play the corporate game. And that corporate game is expected behavior. And what I mean with expected behavior is that it's not necessarily your core strength. That's not who you truly are. You know how to thrive because you learn how to play the tricks in certain environments. Nothing wrong with that. You can build a nice career with that. But is that the maximum potential that you can reach? I beg to differ. Now, why I'm saying is that rock bottom was such an insightful journey for me is that actually I experienced the other way around. If you go from hero to zero, you strip all these labels, these ideas, the status that you have. That was at the time when I was in Malaysia coming out of an expat contract. So you have all these perks, you have all these big team to support you. I have a PA who knows exactly you want this seat in the airplane. You don't need to think about all of this, taken care of. Really nice package into the 7 figures, all of that. Then I started to my own business. Didn't go well, my first startup. At the same time, a lot of life events happened in my personal life. I ran out of money, my marriage failed, my sister passed away, all in the same time. So basically all that identified you just 1 year prior, that's all gone. Now that is quite a humble experience, I can say. I can look back at it as the time it was an awful medicine, but if you look what I learned from it, I think I came out stronger, because when that ego side is gone, all the external labels is gone, all the external expectation is gone. That is, I think, also naked leadership. Then you really find out who you are, what you want, and you have nothing to lose in that sense. So I think that 0 to hero journey is more meaningful in terms of the learning experience. But then my question came for the book. What inspired me then for the book was that how can you then become naked without necessarily having go through rock bottom? I don't wish all of you to go through these kind of rock bottom situations. So can you master that skill by going back to yourself without touching this rock bottom? That was the core question before I started writing my book, and yeah, that's captured in about 200 pages.
Interesting. And you mentioned something as well, which I think so resonate, probably, that what does not break you makes you stronger. If I take a slightly different look at it as well, I mean, I recently took an MBA, and I was going through some of the leadership courses and going through some of the books there as well. How you see that the naked leader, what does that mean to you? And why and how does it differ from the traditional notion of the leadership?
Yeah, for me, the naked leader is not in a physical sense. I always have to make this disclaimer when I talk about my book, is that it's not about removing your clothes. But on the other hand, maybe there is some analogy with the physical nakedness in that sense, is that we are literally born naked. And I dare to say we also die naked. You die alone in that sense. And what do you do in between? The nakedness is, for me, is that is the most authentic version of yourself. And that's one. But also you have the most accurate view of what's going on around you. That is also overcoming ignorance or tunnel vision and that kind of things. So are you fully open to look at yourself, including your dark sides and your blind spots? But are you also open-minded for what's going on, what is changing in the world? The Nokia and Kodak examples have been repeated many times as case studies. That is where I also see that leadership blindness from the external environment. You don't pick up the clues. So it is more than just authentic leadership. It's also the open-mindedness and pick up the clues from the environment to make a change.
Interesting. And I think so that's an important point as well. Your reflection on Nokia, Kodak, and your last point on picking up the clues, because those signals are very important for us to understand that when the transformation is due, when is the right step or right time for us to take it as well. I would strongly encourage the people who have dialed in the audience to reflect as well for major shift or changes in their leadership that may have happened. Please do share in the chat or on the social media. Coming back, I think so. I wanted to also take a bit different view on change and cultural management as well. You mentioned, and I think Humayun also reflected as well, that we have lived in quite a number of countries. Most of us want to visit some of them. But in your global experience, how has the organizational culture helped you or maybe hindered that transformation?
Yeah, if you look at cultural differences, so company culture and national cultures have quite a number of similarities in my view. It's the unspoken rules. This is the way how we live or work together. This is how we do things. And for an outsider, it's not always obvious how these rules were even written, and nobody tells you unless you're in that environment for long enough. So how you can work on that the best way is to adopt a situational approach. I always compare it with raising children is the same thing. If you have 2 or 3 or more children, you will not raise them in exactly the same way. You differentiate based on their age, based on their personality, and things like that. Now, what I see, what helps or what hinders transformation a lot is, especially when we talk about expatriate, is that a lot of expatriates are sent to a country because they were successful in their home country. And I see little consideration from HR departments that their predominant leadership style at home might not necessarily be the most effective leadership style abroad. Now, if you are situational in your approach, that means for me, your leadership toolkit is more than your natural style or your most dominant style that you apply, but you can, not to dismiss yourself, of course, but you can apply multiple styles in different cultural contexts or in different seniority or experience levels that you have within the team. That is, I think, situational leadership. And junior needs a different leadership style than a very experienced senior person in your team. It's exactly the same thing with coaches. So all coaches can be successful. I think that's also open-mindedness. So it's not that my way is better than your way or the other way around. We see that in all countries around the world. We have different systems. We have different ways of working together, but we can all be extremely successful. So that is not the problem. The problem is how can you, as a leader, it starts and ends with yourself, apply the right style at the right moment with the right people in order to deliver the objectives that you're all together for. And I think we share a lot more in common around the world than that separates us. So a lot of leadership styles, I think, can be applied worldwide. And one of that is, I think, respect for differences. I think if you're an international leader, that's the first thing that you need to honor, and then the rest, I think, will follow from there.
Very important phrase, and some of the words that you mentioned as well, especially the openness. And I think so that we take it for granted when some of the expats or some of the leaders move from one location to another location. So that's something that probably is a key takeaway. And another area that you reflect as well, that there are a lot of things that joins us rather than separate us. So I think that there are a lot of commonalities that we should try to build the strength on. And so moving on a bit more from towards your coaching experience as well, because you have been providing that and working on for quite a bit now. So what is the most common cultural barrier that you think that the leaders face when they're driving those changes? I mean, and the most important part would be identifying a problem probably is the most critical part, but then how to overcome it. So very often I see that people identify what are the gaps, but it's very difficult to come back with a solution that how to address those. So from your coaching experience, how you can, what's your reflection on that?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. Is that you can learn it the hard way. So you apply the style that you learn to be successful with in your home country. You can continue to apply that, and then you learn it the hard way because you see people are not responding to you anymore, or they sabotage even things, or different effects can happen. Are you picking up those clues? That's one, of course. Well, you can find out the things hard way, and definitely I also made my cultural mistakes, and partly they are forgiven because people see you as a foreigner in that sense, that you can get away with certain things, but other things can be quite damaging for the relationships that you try to build with the people in your team. And also other stakeholders. Of course, it's not just your team, it's also other stakeholders. So I think HR can be a great help. If you have trouble to really read the room and understand what's going on, I always rely, especially when I was leading global teams, you can't be everywhere at the same time. So my HR was always the ears and eyes on the ground. They know the cultural sensitivities, what is appropriate, what is not. So that helps. I use a bit of some of the cultural frameworks from Hofstede, for instance, where you say, hey, there's a tendency in certain cultures that they have more uncertainty avoidance, so you need to give more upfront clarity about things. Other cultures are a bit more comfortable and they just go along with things. Is it long-term versus short-term? Is it more group or an individualistic in terms of reward systems, things like that. So there is some theory background that you can look into. What I really don't rely on too much is those do's and don'ts. You have those guides and so lists on the internet, and okay, yes, I'm here in Malaysia, you should not open the gift in front of the giver and things like that. But that are really surface things, like I mentioned, easily forgiven if you don't really do that. But what is underneath that is iceberg thing. It takes time to learn these things, so you need help from other people who can tell you what are your blind spots in your behavior. And I think that goes a long way. Yeah, like I said, try new ways of doing things than you would commonly do. So, for instance, yeah, I tend to be more high level, holistic, and pragmatic. So, in cultures where this uncertainty avoidance is really high, I really need to work hard to give enough detail and context upfront before I can, let's say, convince these people to start working on a certain project. So that is not my natural style. It goes against what I normally do. But if I don't do it, I can blame the team. That doesn't work. I can't change the culture on my own. So I need to make the change myself. If that answers your question.
It's very important last point that you made as well. The change starts from self. So you need to change first in order to understand and probably be part of that culture as well, where you are moving or implementing that transformation too. Another thing that I take out from your last few comments is not only to focus on do's and don'ts, but I think so there's a personal relationship that comes in quite a lot of way as well. Hopefully there will be a lot of AI tools coming down the lane that will help us to learn those things much faster. But I think so there are a lot of things that goes with the actual practical experiences or learning from people like you who have gone through those experiences or who have coached a lot of leaders along the way. So if I take a slightly different view as well, I mean, now looking into your personal experience, looking into when you are working, I mean, and then your experience as a coaching, what's your view in terms of how can the leader balance their respecting the existing cultures that are there, while at the same time introducing those very fast-paced transformational changes because they are no longer what was happening taking 10 years, 5 years. In my personal experience, in my group as well, the changes are very fast now. So it doesn't take months or years, it takes days now to bring those changes. But most of those are disruptive, but those are enabled by most of them are enabled by the technology. So what your views are, how the leader can balance it, but keeping the cultural context in view and in mind as well?
Yeah, I think what is important for that to distinguish between the why and the how. So the why of the transformation is often unclear or not explained, and we need to spend a lot of time with our teams to explain the why. But the how can be different in different cultures and even in different teams or even with different individuals. I think we should be very flexible on the how, but the why is the non-negotiable part. That's one. Secondly, I think also we look into the rapid pace of change and we focus a lot on what should be changed and people should do differently. But let's also look at what is not changing. And that creates more stability, that creates more predictability, or that creates a bit more resilience as well, is that not everything is changing all the time. So if you also look at, hey, what is stable, what remains stable, what perspective can you give to people? AI is a great example where a lot of employees rightfully have this big question mark above their head, like, is my job going to be affected, right? Now, rather, I think you need to be realistic here in your messaging. So rather than saying, nothing will happen, but there might be a downsizing down the road, I think that's not a great message because people will find out very quickly whether that's an authentic answer or not. The other hand is, of course, also not advisable, is that to say, all of the jobs will be replaced by robots. I don't think that's going to happen either. So the truth is somewhere in between. So what you need to give is rather than focusing on only on, okay, this is the change and this is the potential negative impact or even jobs are affected, what remains the same and what is your perspective for the future? How is this making your career or your job better in the future? And is that an exciting future for you? If you can have a good answer on that picture, then people are much more open for the change because they have something to gain out of it themselves rather than see it as a threat. Because as long as you keep it in a threat, in an uncertainty, the fear mode kicks in, the survival mode kicks in. And one thing's for sure, survival is not good for productivity or even good teamwork. Everybody's pretty much focusing on keeping their job secure, and that's a very negative environment to be in.
Interesting. Maybe if I can take one quick additional note as well, and Munisa was reflecting on that, which is that is a change of leadership style required depending on the generational composition of team? For example, the Gen Zs are coming and we have other people coming as part of the not only local team but global setup as well. So how you see that part as well? Do we really need to have a leadership style change based on the type of or generational composition of your team?
Well, everyone can change. So the often people in the older part of the brackets say, "Yeah, I'm too old to change," or I've always done these things these ways. For me, and that's also brain plasticity. Literally, biologically speaking, everyone can change. The only thing is that when you grow older, you have repeated certain habits for a longer time. So it takes a bit more effort to, let's say, rewire your brain literally for new habits. That's the only thing. People who have been smoking for 20 years probably have a harder time than if you only smoke one cigarette and never do it again, right? So I think that everyone can change. Of course, the younger generation grew up with certain technologies already. They actually expect, they feel like when they start in the corporate world that they might be a bit slow in adapting these things, stuff like that. So I think you need to manage the intercultural aspects carefully. Also situational leadership in that sense, right? And again, I think change management also is what is the perspective, what's in it for them, what is it there in the long run? And are the people ready to embrace? Now, I think that 80% to 90% of the people are ready to embrace a change at some point if you coach them well throughout the change journey. And then maybe 10 to 20% are really resisting it for the sake of resisting it. That's called stubbornness. We need to find some good solution together with HR, maybe outside of the company or inside the company. But I believe that if we do our job well as a leader, 80 to 90% definitely can transform, can change, can embrace the journey that we together we embark on. I believe that because if we don't spend that time ourselves as a leader, I think that's a leadership failure. The last 10 to 20% is probably more the individual employee issue.
No, indeed, very insightful on that part as well. Maybe if I also ask the reflection for the audience as well, that if you have worked in different countries, if you have worked in different geographies as well, maybe if you can share what are the cultural insights that have shaped your leadership style, or for example, in case of any cultural barrier that you have personally encountered while leading those changes, be it regional, be it global, or be it local, please type your questions or reflections in the chat. We will take it as we go along. Yeah, Dennis, coming back, I mean, thank you so much for your insights on the culture, actually. If we move a bit and take a shift towards something a bit more personal, your mindset as a leader. So your book outlined 7 powerful steps to change management. So if I may ask, of these 7 steps you outline, which do leaders most commonly struggle with, and what makes it so challenging? And probably some part of ancillary question as well that I think so Munisa was writing it and I picked it up, that what are some warning signs that one leadership style or action is not working? So a change of course is warranted. So it's a bit longer 3-part question, if I may ask.
Yeah, the 7 steps are not sequential. I would say they are more levels of awareness. Maybe it's a better way to describe it. And the higher the level of awareness, so where do leaders struggle the most is, I think, to get into the higher levels of awareness. And most of us are stuck in the lower level of awareness. Now, let me first quickly introduce the 7 steps for those who have not read the book yet. So on the lowest level, we need to work on self-care, the stress management. So then your brain literally narrows when you're in a stress mode. So for open-mindedness and awareness, that is really a self-centered place to be. If you climb the Himalayas without oxygen, some people do that. I haven't done that, but I love these mountaineering stories. then literally your brain, your whole body is in a survival mode. And of course, you will go to the summit with a team, but if one of the team members slides down, you can't help them. And that sounds very harsh and selfish, but that's what it is. You have no room to help them because, like in an airplane, your oxygen mask you put on yourself before you assist others. So stress is, I think, a big factor in, because we are in stressful jobs as leaders, we have a lot of pressure, but it's making us less effective as leaders. So that's the lowest level that I think a lot of us are struggling with anyway. So resilience, stress management, I think, is the foundation for good leadership. And leadership is always about others, but you have to help yourself first, right? Now, the second step is about focus. So that's also about leadership presence. Are we really focused on what we do? Are we really focused on the person that's in the room? So I remember a moment where I had a tense meeting with the CEO, and then right after I had a one-to-one with one of my team members. Do you think that that previous meeting does not affect how I act or react in that next meeting with the employee? For sure it will. So leadership presence for me is not only not being on the phone while you're talking to an employee, but it's really to be grounded and to be really there for that person, listening skill and all those things come into play. So that's level 2. Level 3 is also about confidence, because if we are not confident, it's really hard to drive any transformation. If you're not, and there's so much ambiguity and uncertainty also in the world right now. So if you start to doubt yourself, that will for sure also reflect in how you communicate with other people. Even if you don't say it, people will pick it up somehow, right? Level 4 is then compassionate leadership or empathetic leadership. That's being more connected with people. I think that is also very crucial in terms of transformation, because people look at someone who is supportive and help them through the journey, and that leads a lot of empathy and patience and that kind of qualities. Then the top levels, and you see it's getting more challenging as we go to the higher levels in that sense to navigate this. So next level is for me, inspiring leadership is authentic leadership. Are you 100% yourself? That also means that you don't need to have all the answers. In an uncertain environment, you don't have, and we always think as a leader that we should have an answer. We always should have a decision right now, and we should know what to say. But in an uncertain environment, do you have all the answers? Remember back from COVID, do you know when the lockdown would end in your city or country where you live? Nobody could predict that. So we should let go of that part and just admit, say, okay, we don't know when this is going to end. But one thing I do know is we're in this together, you and me and all of us, and I'm sure we will get out. That's the confidence that you have to make, the confidence in the team rather than the confidence in the external answers that you don't have. Now, level 6 is then about intuition. That's about visionary leadership. Do you have a clear vision for the future? That is also, I mean, every company claims to have a vision, but I think very few companies have really an actual compelling vision that is very motivating, that no matter the odds, and no matter the uncertainties, no matter the detours, that's where we are going. That's the North Star. So we also need to work on that. That will only work if you have done all these lower layers. And if you're in the stress mode, you can't see a big picture vision anymore, for sure. Now, top level, that is more what also Maslow called transcendent. That is, why are we in business? That's more than just making money, but also what is your impact for the world and beyond your own premises of your organization. So there are the 7 layers. So I think, where most leaders struggle the most with is, of course, to get to the top layers more and more and free up their management time to work more on those levels rather than firefighting and daily issues all the time.
Thanks, Dennis, for reflecting, first of all, on those 7 different layers as well. And one thing that is coming out clear to me now as well, that it's not one part that you need to work on. Probably there are certain areas where you need to work more, but definitely you need to address all those 7 areas. Moving on to another part, which is also part of still the leadership mindset, and probably I'll take a personal example. By personal, I mean sports example, the one that I like. I used to still follow club actually. I used to follow a club called Manchester United, very successful in their football until Alex Ferguson. So the team was the same, only the leader changed. The moment he went away, a new leader came in, the high performing team were there, and all of a sudden the things started to go down. And we can find a lot of similar examples in very big companies as well. And whenever a change happened, a transformation happened, is because of either the leaders, a new leader coming in or new strategy coming in. How do you ensure that, how the leader ensure that their personal transformation creates that a ripple effect that goes across their teams and organization, and the teams and organization stays successful and keep on performing. But very often than not, we see a lot of failures happening as well. So how can the leader ensure that part to remain successful?
Yeah, that is the $1 million question, I would say. And if it all that was easy, because also the 7 steps I just mentioned, I mean, we are still a work in progress, right? Well, I think what is the most important shift is that we shift from doing to being. So
Yes.
even if a new leader comes in but is doing exactly the same things, it's still a different impact that they have. Because the shift to the being, that is your personal transformation, is that who you are, how do you show up? These 7 steps, how have you worked on those? That is your impact that you have on other people. That is what inspires people. That is what is genuine. I think that makes a whole lot of difference. And yeah, people who understand that the most, I think, are the most naked versions of themselves. And number one leadership problem that we all have, I think the biggest distorting factor is the ego side of things. Because ego, most leadership problems are related to ego. And ego is there to protect you, but it also has a lot of collateral damage, meaning it affects your relationship with other people. And since leadership is about leading other people, I think the ego is the number one thing that you need to work on to make that shift from doing to being. And how you do that, that's of course described at length. I can talk about this for many more hours, but the ego is covered here prominently in the book.
I think so. That's an important part you reflected as well, and I think so that the trust in the judgment of the team goes a long way as well. So even if you think that you may be right, but if there's a strong proposal coming in from the rest of the organization or from someone in the team, go with their judgment as well and see where it leads, because that's the part of development too. If I may ask, I mean, I'm not sure to what extent you'll be able to share for this because of the sensitivity or other part of the deal, but from your experience, can you share one example of any leader you have worked over the years that have transformed successfully their organization, and how that impacted their organization? And what was the real change that they brought in, more from softer side?
Yeah, well, actually, they themselves, of course, worked on their personal transformation, subsequently on the transformation within the organization. So one example I can give, just call him John to protect the privacy of the person involved. Is that's why I'm saying working on yourself is so important, because the original question he came to me is that I need to find out how I can find better people. He was constantly complaining about his staff. They are useless. They are not. They're not taking any accountability, and I need to check everything all the time, and so they are not motivated. And also, HR did an employee survey, and it showed very low engagement score. Turnover was high. So basically, everything he came up with was he was blaming the team. So that was quite an interesting topic, because I think, okay, if that's really all the stuff is bad, what's going on there, right? So I said, okay, well, why don't you fire them all just to get the conversation starting? Eh? If you say all your people are useless, why don't you fire them, all of them? Yeah, but then how can I do the work then? Yeah, somebody needs to do the work. So I said, well, is there something they do right then? Now he started to think, yeah, actually, this and this quite well. These things he took for granted. A lot of things actually go well. So that label of useless, that all people are useless, is already a way for a leader to, and that's the ego. What I would say is that it's not your problem; it's their problem. Yeah, employees is at fault. That's their problem. But then when I said, okay, do they something right? Yeah, actually this and this. I said, okay, did you thank them for that? What do you mean? We pay a salary, right? They should be grateful that we pay a salary. I said, no, did you ever thank them? No, why should I? Now, the conversation evolved further. I said, try it one more time. Not because I say so, but if you really think they did a good job on something, even if it's a tiny bit, for the rest, you can call them useless, whatever you want. But if there's something they do good in the next week, just thank them. See what is the impact. Now, that is a very small and tiny thing as I discuss it here, but the impact of that two words is tremendous impact for the people. Now, this is the employees were all like, wow, what is going on here? Like, suddenly my boss is grateful for the fact that I did a good job. Now, that's the personal transformation. Can you look beyond your ego? Because if you complain about your staff, you're actually complaining about yourself. And you hired this staff, you're in charge to motivate them. That's your job as a leader anyway, right? So yeah, I think that is the small turnaround that we make that snowball into bigger changes, which of course all credited to him. It's not because of me or something.
Well, thanks a lot. I think so. It's a very good reflection as well. It's a human nature for us to get that appreciation. Once we receive appreciation, we feel better about it as well. But creating that trust and creating that environment for delegation and growth is part of that transformation. Maybe I take a quick pause as well and ask the audience if they have any specific leaders in mind who inspired them over the years. Please reflect it in the chat and why so, and we'll probably try to reflect toward the end of the conversation. While we were discussing on this personal experience or example of the leader, we are actually naturally segue to the third part or the next part of our conversation, which is more on change management. And I think so that's quite an important part where you mentioned about the leader. Either you can take it from egoistic perspective, that they didn't want to say thanks because there is a way of appreciation going to the employees in the form of remuneration. But what is the biggest misconception generally the leaders have about the change management? And if I may add to that part, is that how the leaders can create that psychological safety for employees during the time of any change, be it rapid or be it slow, but any change, how they can create that psychological safety that they be part of the solution rather than becoming part of the problem.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for change management, what I see as well, first of all, it can't be forced top down. I think that is important. So it's multidimensional. Yeah, it's bottom up, it's top down, but it's also inside out and outside in. It is actually a transformation is not only about something new, but it's also letting go of the old. And we don't spend enough time on that process to guide people really through that process. So I think that is the biggest misconception that leaders have. It is kind of a mourning process. Yeah? Something old is gone, and something new a new reality is coming in. And so how do you facilitate that journey? I think that is what change management really is about, and not about a new org structure or a new SOP or whatever we call it, or a new tool that we implement. That is the visible outcome of the change management, but the underlying process in human change is on that. That's one. Secondly, is that why people change. Why would people change in the first place? Now, one is, of course, if the gain of the change is bigger than the pain of not changing, that's where change occurs. And often we don't even mention that. What is actually the pain of not changing? because change is painful. The process is painful. Like I said, I compare it with the mourning process and grief process. So that's always painful. But not changing is most likely more painful. But we have not really addressed that part. Or we have not explained what is actually the gain. And that must be the individualized gain, what I mentioned before. What's in it for me, not what's in it for the company. Making more profits is not a motivational factor for individual employees unless they are on nice bonus set systems or something like that. But even then, money in itself is not a change driver for a lot of things. So what is the gain? What is the perspective you can give? So I think that pain and gain equation is a very important one. And the bottom-up part is to guide and spend sufficient time with the people. They are in different stages of that grief process to keep them on board until you have gone through the whole transformation.
Interesting. Another word that is very much associated with the change is vulnerability. And that question probably is very close to my heart as well. In the sense that whenever there's a change happening, there's a lot of things that are unknown. So you don't know what you don't know. And part of the tough decision for the leader is to drive the organization during the change, in the time of uncertainty, but with the limited knowledge and information as well. So how do you think that what role that vulnerability plays in leading a successful change initiatives? And that's very close to my heart, that question as well. So I'm very eager to learn more, in particularly on this topic too.
Yeah, because vulnerability is seen as soft and weak. Yeah? And vulnerability for me is also not drama. Okay, so vulnerability is for me is a form of honesty. And like I mentioned before, what if you don't have all the answers? And leadership in the next decades is going to be more and more without having the answers of even tomorrow. So you need to shift to that situation that if you're the captain on the ship, we're on this together. Whether it's a storm or whether it's nice weather, it doesn't matter. We are all on the same ship, and we make sure that we will sail somewhere safely together. That's the only certainty we have. We put in all the efforts that we can, given whatever situation, whatever stormy conditions we will encounter. And that is the confidence that we need to bring. And being vulnerable that we don't know when the next storm comes in, that is very acceptable because you're respected as a leader and people know that you're not taking them for a ride in terms of what you promise or what you don't promise.
Yeah, interesting. And another part as well, most of the change that we have been trying to discuss or you have been sharing insight, they're not very short term. Usually most of the changes that impacts people's lives are very long term. And there a specific strategy, a specific transformation is required probably. How do you see the leader can maintain that exact momentum that is start of the change, which could be the day one, to 5 years down the lane, if it's a long chain, depending on how we see the time frame, but how they can keep that momentum and it does not die off in the middle, and then we lost the objective and the aims that we set.
Yeah, that is also a very big challenge in the sense that if you have a rapid change, how do we navigate that from a long-term perspective and not just hopping on the latest trends or change course every day, like you would do on a ship, to use that analogy. So what I think is that transformation is the long-term perspective, whereas change is what you do differently one step at a time on a daily basis. So a lot of people mix up transformational leadership and change management. They have different horizons. Now, how can you have a long-term perspective with an uncertain future? I learned from Amazon head Jeff Bezos, who in a digital world, you can't really have a long-term plan. I think 3 years is already a very long term in the digital world, right? So how can you have a strategy if the world is changing so rapidly? Now, what he said is, what are the eternal truths for your business? Every business has an eternal truth. And that will not change over maybe the next 100 years. But the way things are going, that can change. So for Amazon, for instance, the eternal truths are speed of delivery and price. So speed of delivery, and nobody in 50 years from now will ask him to say, oh, can you deliver it a little bit slower? Yeah, let it be for a while. No, nobody will say that. Oh, price. Well, actually, I want higher prices. So he defined eternal truths, pricing and delivery speed. Now, how you deliver it, okay, it can be a fan. Tomorrow it will be a drone, and maybe in future we'll go via space directly to another continent. We don't know. That doesn't matter. That can change. You can't predict that. There's no long-term plan that can even have that answer right now. But the eternal truth is something that you know very certain, that is in the next decades or centuries is not going to change. So that is, I think, very important. Also, that it is a compelling vision that you have that people want to work on. And SpaceX is a good example. Okay, Elon Musk is a bit controversial. Let's put his political side aside for now. But the SpaceX mission, everyone who is a rocket engineer would love to work for that project. That is the mission to Mars is, of course, a great mission to work on. So also there, they don't even know how to get to Mars. And the same with the Apollo program in the 60s. When Kennedy announced it, they had no clue how to get to the moon. But that vision was so compelling that people were determined to figure it out. So I think that's where long-term and short-term can still work together. Then change management is what you do. And change also happened with one step at a time. Yeah, and Tiny Habits, Atomic Habits is this famous book from James Clear. I love that one. It's a few small steps every day is a massive change over time. So transformation is not always like radical or totally disruptive. And in a year, you can also be very disruptive already.
Unfortunately, the time that we have allocated for this session cannot justify the broader breadth of the topic that we have. Sorry, Maya, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly interrupt, right? I mean, very interesting, very insightful conversation. I just don't mean to steal away any thunder, but just wanted to call out, right? So we have some interesting questions and engagement from in the chat box from the audience. I'm not sure if you can see that. One of the observations that stands out to me is this, that I think our women leaders, what I can see from the chat, they are more proactively asking questions, which is a great sign. I can quickly call out few questions, and then maybe as you move towards the tail end, let's just try to address those, right? So I think one of the prompt, Adil, you had in the beginning, that what does transformation mean for you at a personal level, right? So Amina Shah says it says growth, which completely resonates with me. And let me couple that with Amina's another question that she posted in the chat. A very interesting question, that can they talk about the language barrier and it's a transformation impact, right? So I think that's what she's asking. So there are a few more questions, but let's try to address this first. Yeah.
Yeah, language to me is not just language as in Urdu versus English versus Spanish, but language is also messaging in terms of relatability. When you talk to a town hall meeting, I had a very great example in one of my workshops. Pitch your change. We are your employees. Pitch announce your change to us. And then we was talking about synergy and market share and all this MBA language. And then any questions? So the other participants in the group one said, "Sir, do I still have a job tomorrow?" And he said, "Wow, this is a priceless question," because he totally forgot to relate to the audience. So language for me means whatever you want to achieve, and even if it's about market share, but what does that mean? And don't assume that everybody knows exactly what a market share is, or is directly in their control or remit. For the individuals, that is for me the language. Which language do you use? Is it understood by people who work as a cleaner or at the reception desk as well? That is very important. Yeah, in an international environment, of course, language barriers also play where not everybody speaks fluent English. That's of course another barrier. But even in your own language, you already have this miscommunication just because of lack of relatability.
Yeah. Thank you, Dennis. Then I'll read out Asher's question. Dennis, when you're trying to lead with full transparency and authenticity, how do you decide what's important to share versus what might overwhelm or distract your teams?
Yeah, that is also a very good question. So for me, authenticity does not mean that you're totally an open book. And also in certain cases, you cannot share everything. I think we don't share enough as leaders most of the time. There's also a consulting company, I don't know, one of the big five, that said we open all data in the company. Everyone can access this shared drive, all data except salary information. I think that's quite a bold step. So there's nothing to hide. All meeting minutes from every meetings are there. Yeah, that might be overwhelming because I don't think that everybody has time to look into all the information that's out there anyway, right? It's almost like you have a total Google internet. You cannot read the entire internet in a lifetime anyway. So you're right. So also there, I think relatability, but it's also being selective. What is the person's need? And you should not be talking all the time anyway. Sometimes silence can be the best way to be authentic in that sense, right? Just be there for a person. So yeah. I think that's, I can talk about it more, but for the sake of time, that's my short answer. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think just adding a quick comment on that, right? So probably it's more about right balancing between the transparent that you want to be. Do you want to share 100% or 200%, or maybe you want to be more intentional in what is relatable? And I think probably in transformation, one of my learning has been over communication rather than under communication is always super important, right? So I think that's probably where we need to balance it right. Then Sayyid Imtiaz says greetings to everybody. And then there is a question from Sidra. Hello, Dennis. Please elaborate how transformation, corporate culture, or human behavior with respect or personal life survive with two different is impose a huge impact on human personality. Maybe let me club it with another relevant question, right? So there was another one. Let me just quickly go to that. Okay, yeah. So how do you handle conflicts with a team member as a leader? And I think this the question says steps, please.
Sorry, the last one. Can you repeat it?
How do you handle conflicts with a team member as a leader?
Okay. Yeah, we can also do a dedicated session on that one with all sorts of conflicts that we have. See, for me, leadership starts before conflicts arise. And it's not that we try to avoid any conflict, because there can be healthy levels of conflict, but conflict handling is something that we need to build way before they arise. So we need to work actively on trust in the team, accountability in the team, shared accountability, and all those things. Yeah, also, again, I can talk about this for a very long time. But what is most important as a leader is that you are the facilitator. If the conflict is about an issue, then we need to solve the issue and don't make it personal. I don't like blame games, and blame games are backward looking and are fault finding. So if it's an issue, solve the issue as much as possible. If it is personal, I would say talk to the individuals first and then bring them together and see what we can do. There's always two sides of the stories in that, things like that. So first of all, we need to separate, is it an issue or is it a personal matter that we need to look into, and then take it from there.
Yep. Thanks, Dennis. I think this addresses both Muhammad and Sidra's question. Maybe the last one, this is very interesting. So before I pass the floor back to Adil, and I'm guessing that probably at some stage, all of us probably, even now, maybe go through some of these experiences. So the question from Iman is, if my current role does not give me choice or option for change or transformation, and I face resistance, should I give up on very idea of change, or should just be focused on personal change? Dennis.
Well, we will always face resistance in both in life and in business. And also, even if you don't have the title leader, you can influence other people. So yes, if you focus on personal change, to quote Mahatma Gandhi, be the change that you want to see in the world, you will always have an impact on other people. Yes, in certain cases, you might say I'm out of control, but that does not mean that you're out of influence. I think that is a very different aspect. And of course, the way you deal with the change is also up to you. So that's where you take your responsibility.
Fantastic. So Adil, so I think I've covered all the questions in the chat. So, but I see there are two questions, one from Monish Saab and there's
Yes.
another one from Sayed Imtiaz. So you want to take those questions?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Maya. Thanks a lot for taking the lead, first of all, for taking those questions from the audience. So there's a question from Manisha as well. There were two questions earlier that I tried to club in with some of the earlier discussion. And that is, one question is that given that there are generally no formal training available in corporate environment for the leadership, then what are some avenues that are available for the potential leaders to upgrade their leadership skills? So if I may reflect and put some context from my personal experience is, so how do we ensure that we learn from the mistakes of others rather than making our own mistakes? And that's going to be a long learning process. So how we can, first of all, what are the avenues available and how the potential leaders can upgrade their skills as well?
Yeah, well, for me, a short answer is that you need a mirror. And you can be your own mirror. That means reflection. If you're 110% busy, that means you don't have time to reflect. So that's one thing. You need to pause. You need to step back sometimes and reflect. Journaling can also have whatever works for you. But it's quite hard to see your own blind spots or sometimes even to learning. We keep repeating the same things until the lesson is learned, right? Both in life and in work. So that mirror, that can be a good coach who is asking you the questions, or a trusted friend, or maybe your spouse as well, if they can relate to what you do in work. But find a mirror, that's very important. Be your own mirror, but also find a mirror. And that's the best way to learn.
Well, I think so that's a very good reflection as well. Finding someone to ask and look for your areas of improvement. Another question that is there from Sayed Imtiaz Abbas Hussain Saab, which is that in the full automation working environment, how does a human leadership handle and contribute?
Yeah, well, actually, we need to get used to the fact that we're going to manage people and robots, and robots should be treated as full members of a team. That sounds very logical on a high level, but it's not easier said than done, because they are not physically present unless you have the physical robots. I heard that China is now launching something like that. But they will be part and parcel of the daily work environment, and they need to be involved in projects, in tasks, and things like that, as if they are your colleagues. So I will also recommend to give robots a name, so at least to personalize it a bit more. But for leaders, that's status. Yeah, I manage 200 people. That is part of even your salary is related to how much responsibility you have and things like that. That will all change, because it's not about your team size anymore. It's about the impact that you can make together with robots and humans. And the more robots we get, the more important the human factor will become anyway. So I think that's what we need to focus on. Technology skills, but definitely the human skills.
That's a very good reflection as well. And I think so. Yesterday, I just saw one news article regarding the robot taxi that fell in the manhole in China because of the fact that it was unable to detect some of those barriers. So still, there's a lot of, I think so, control that relies that needs to be placed on human intelligence. Probably that technology is there to support and help, but we still, as you mentioned, that take them as an employee, give them names and personalize it and take them as a part of the workforce. Very insightful, I think. So thanks a lot for answering those questions as well. And maybe coming back to some of the closing remarks that we would like to get from you, Dennis, on some more personal reflections, some takeaways from the conversation for us and for the audience as well. So, if I may ask, in terms of if there is one behavior that you would encourage every leader to start practicing today, that can drive their personal transformation, and what would that be? And that probably resonates with the last question that was asked earlier from Iman regarding the idea of change or not to change. But what would be one probably characteristics that you would like leaders to start practicing from today?
Yeah, actually, I would combine the answer for 1 and 3 in one by a question, by asking a question, because the answer will be different for everyone. So my main question is to reflect upon is who are you? Who do you want to be? And what's your legacy? So if you look back at 20, 30 years or at the end of your life, what have you done in your life? And that I think start with the end in mind makes you make the right choices in life and in career. If you have that answer for yourself, I think you're in a good position.
Excellent. Just reflecting a bit more, probably going back to another question as well. How do you personally stay grounded? I mean, as a leader, while leading others through those transformation changes as well. I mean, you reflected a bit more on the ego aspect as well. That when you have so much power, at times it comes to your head as well. But how you stay grounded to look into that human factor when you are driving those transformation changes? Because at the end of the day,
Oh, you're on mute now.
Actually, the system unmuted me. Sorry for that. So what I wanted to ask was that in most cases, in case of transformation, it does impact humans, it does impact people, it does impact the change. And how do you ensure that you stay grounded during those changes as well, and it doesn't come to your head, those powers, those changes?
Yeah, well, I think never ever take yourself too serious. I think that is the most important part. The moment you take yourself too serious is where the ego becomes the strongest. So laugh at yourself. Don't be afraid to make the mistakes, and also laugh about those mistakes. If you look back, you will be laughing about it. Hopefully, no, that's the number one thing. Don't take yourself too seriously. Because that also means that you're still open enough for looking at things in a less pressured way. Maybe that's the right word to describe it. And to literally stay grounded, I think then self-care is also an important one. That you need to manage your rat race. So self-care, stress management, taking time off at the right times, that's also very important.
Maybe if you don't mind taking one more question as well from the audience. So Aswad has put a very interesting question, and I thought that probably if we have, even though we ran out of time, if we can ask this question, which is change of management is sometimes an overall change of leadership in an organization. How to handle such situation? For example, in case of a change of major shareholders, they will bring change of leadership. So how to hold or manage resistance from the employees or remain them engaged with the organizational objective? So I think so. It's a very broad question, but very, very important question with the mergers and acquisitions happening these days.
Yeah, I mean, being in the leadership position is becoming a very high-risk career choice. And if you take the football world for an example, is that you're easily be fired for even if your results are slightly below the expectations. So I think that is not good. I think the average tenure of CEOs in companies is too short. Also, there's not much backward accountability. So decisions that are made by one CEO or CFO might have consequences in 5 years down the road, but that leadership team is gone. So in that sense, I think it's not a good sign if you have frequent changes of management. Also, I think if the company is not rooted in a strong vision, that also means that the survivability of that vision is on the line when there's a change of leadership. If the vision is strong, then even a change of leader will not affect the vision. And that's also quite rare, because most of the new leaders, they want to make their mark, the famous 100 days. They need to change something to make sure that they establish themselves as the new leader, and everything that the previous leader has decided upon needs to be re-evaluated for some reason. That is change because of change. I don't think that's a good thing. Secondly, this continuous restructuring for me means a strategic failure. If you are in a transformational organization, then change is a continuous way of thinking and a way of working. restructuring is a last resort. That means you're already too late. There's an external trigger for a change that you're forced to make very drastic measures. I think that's a leadership failure. And when companies are continuously in this restructuring mode, I think that's a really a downhill spiral where the employees are busy with a lot of things, but not with customers and being very productive. So we need to get out of that mode and become more long-term transformational leaders rather than destructive restructuring type of leaders, which are managers.
Yeah, restructuring should not become part of every year strategy or every other strategy cycle. Otherwise, as you reflected, that it probably will be a leadership failure itself. If you don't mind, can we take one more question, which is quite interesting as well, and it came from Ahmed Raza Baloch Saab, and he said, I moved from corporate sector into a senior finance reform role in government in public sector. While the finance secretary supports the mandate, many long-serving officials are resistant to outside experts. How can I build cooperation and trust while still pushing reform? So it's a very personal question, and yeah, your insight will be very helpful.
Yeah, that's a very practical. And mostly, I see it's the other way around. By the way, they trust external experts more than the internal people, even though they say exactly the same thing. That's why they hire an external consultant. But in this case, it's the other way around. Well, the most important here, I mean, I'm not in this situation, so from a context point of view, but the most important question here is to uncover why they are resisting. And that needs very good questioning skills, open questions. The underlying reason is that fear. What type of fear? A lot of resistance comes from fear, but there can be fear of the unknown. There can be fear of, okay, if these persons know more than me, what am I doing here? There is some psychology behind it, why people resist things. So I think to start with the right questions, to uncover that first, leads you eventually to better insights how to handle this situation. I can't answer that right now from what I read here, of course, but if you frame that questions correctly, you might find out if you have built a rapport with this person and you ask the right questions.
Actually, we have covered all the questions that we have from the chat as well. So I would like to thank you, Dennis, for sharing such a powerful insights today. I mean, I think so these reflections of embracing these authenticity, leading with the vulnerability, which is very close to me as well, and transforming mindset, I think it has given us a lot to think about. And as we navigate our leadership style as we go along this journey as well. But thanks a lot for providing that context and answering very practical questions as we come along. But to everyone as well, I would really like and encourage you guys to take a moment after this session to reflect what is the naked leadership looks like for you and how you can bring your true self to drive a meaningful transformation and a change to your personal self, to personal leadership, and also to your organization and to communities at wide. Thank you so much for all of you for joining the session. Thanks a lot for very interesting questions as well. Before I hand it back to Dennis and Humayun, I wish you a very relaxing weekend and the transformation times ahead. And last but not least, for all the friends and colleagues who are joining from Singapore, Happy National Day.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Dennis and Humayun.
Thank you so much, Rio, for having me, and it was a pleasure. Really wonderful questions to ask. I love these questions, and I wish you all indeed a very nice weekend and a very. I wish you a good mirror in your life. I think that's important, and to become your naked self. I think that's the best version of yourself is your naked self, and then it never feels like working anymore. I think that's the best situation to be in, is that it doesn't feel like working. That's what I wish for all of you.
Thank you, Dennis. And just maybe a quick teaser for you, right? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know that your next book is coming up. So do you want to share a bit about that, a teaser?
Yeah, that one is called Business as Unusual. So the first one, so it's a trilogy actually. So there will be a third version next year, sometime next year. This is now on the record. So the first one is make leadership is about yourself, because leadership starts with yourself. The part two is Business as Unusual, is about business transformation. So I cover that from different angles. Humayun also contributed to the finance chapter, where we challenge conventional thinking in this case in finance, because we're in unusual times. So we also need to adopt unusual approaches to our leadership. So it extends from the naked leader more into different business roles and functions. And the third one, expected next year, is then about sustainable transformation in terms of what is the positive impact that you bring to the rest of the world, and not just for your profit and loss account for your own company. So that is then number 3. And then we go full circle, because a better world starts with yourself, right? So that's the trilogy.
Perfect. All the very best, Dennis, for you. And I encourage everybody to read that book. I mean, I had opportunity to read both the books, the next one that's coming up as well. So super insightful, super useful. I mean, the first one, The Naked Leader, in fact, I read it twice. I mean, it's very smooth, very relatable at many levels. So thank you so much, Dennis. Thank you so much, Adil, for taking time on Saturday, sharing the insights. Thank you very much for the audience for engaging. Thank you to the ICAP team. I think maybe a couple of things as we round it up, right? So one of the things that Dennis mentioned was that transformation, the changes that we come across, it's essentially work in progress, right? So maybe another way to look at it is that it's a process. I think some of the questions were also about that, what will transformation look like? I mean, it's not just that, you just flip a switch and things are transformed. So it's a process, right? So important thing to reflect on is that, I mean, just to check the temperature in the room, the patience level, how do you manage the stakeholders? I think those are some of the key variables. Part of it controllable, part of it not controllable, but super important is how you react to it, right? So I think that's the thing that anybody can control, right? So I think that's one of the important aspects. Another thing from interaction between Adil and Dennis that I picked up was that, yeah, I mean, it's okay not to have all the answers. I mean, as a leader, you are not expected to have all the answers. And perhaps, I mean, in some cases, as you grow through the leadership ranks, enhance responsibility, if you continue to be the person who has all the answers, then probably you're not in the right place, because I think then probably either you're overshadowing the teams or you yourself are not growing, because those may be functional or maybe leadership aspects that everybody's coming to you. So just reflect on those things. Like Adil said, that, yeah, I mean, reflect over the weekend, and wishing everybody all the best for transformative weeks ahead. And thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.